Hey everyone, Gamescom 2023 is currently happening in Cologne, Germany, and developers have been sharing a bunch of gameplay and details on upcoming games. While there are a ton of awesome titles worth talking about, I wanted to make a video on just one, Assassin's Creed Mirage. I know this may be asking for a lot, but if Ubisoft doesn't mess this game up, Assassin's Creed Mirage could be the beginning of something incredible and new in the gaming industry. Now, let me acknowledge something before we begin. I am well aware that this is massive speculation on how the video game industry works. I'm not going to pretend that I have a firm grasp on all of the economics or how video game development works, because I clearly don't. I am an idiot. Instead, I want to talk about this game and its potential as just an average consumer. It has been about 3 years since we've gotten a new Assassin's Creed game, but that doesn't mean that Ubisoft hasn't been busy. Since 2020, we have seen Immortals Fenyx Rising, Far Cry 6, Mario plus Rabbids, and a ton of propaganda for Skull and Bones, which Ubisoft apparently just won't give up on. On top of that, Ubisoft is also taking a crack at some big IPs, including Star Wars and Avatar. Obviously, Ubisoft is a massive developer, so they have a bunch of different talent working on different games at the same time. Anyway, while all of these other games are being worked on, Ubisoft was also able to make time for a smaller scale, new Assassin's Creed game. The game will follow Basim, a character from Valhalla in the city of Baghdad during the 9th century. After the last 3 Assassin's Creed titles featured more of an open world exploration type of gameplay, Mirage is bouncing back to the more traditional Assassin's Creed playstyle. The game has been described as being smaller in size, more linear, and more focused on parkour, stealth, and story. But why does any of that matter? Well, good question. Let's go back a little and go over some context. The last time we got an Assassin's Creed game of this variety was way back in 2015 with Assassin's Creed Syndicate. So it's been about 8 years since the last time we've gotten a true Assassin's Creed entry. That's a long time, especially in gaming years. Since then, there's been 3 new Assassin's Creed games, and these games are quite a bit different than the older titles. By the time Syndicate rolled around, fans were beginning to grow a bit tired of the old school Assassin's Creed formula. I mean, at this point, they've had 9 games in the franchise over the span of nearly a decade. A change was needed, and a change is what they got. Ubisoft leaned into the archetypes of modern gaming in 2017 with their first new Assassin's Creed game, Assassin's Creed Origins. Ubisoft ditched the traditional AC playstyle in favor of a large open world and adding in RPG elements such as unique armor, leveling, skill trees, crafting, and more. For better or worse, Assassin's Creed was no longer a traditional action game. Now, the franchise is a massive open world RPG. Some of these elements aren't completely new to the franchise, but this is the first time where it really felt like the emphasis was on the RPG aspects. And you know what? It worked. Origins has sold over 10 million units and received praise from consumers and reviewers alike. Hot on the heels of Origins' success, Ubisoft kept this style of gameplay for the next Assassin's Creed entry, Assassin's Creed Odyssey. The devs now doubled down on the changes they made in Origins, making the Odyssey Map larger, the story longer, and the protagonist more customizable. All of this only just 1 year later in 2018. With these changes and the quick turnaround, however, came a draw. The game was buggier and had some performance issues. The story felt a bit more drawn out than necessary, and the open world felt a bit bloated, albeit incredible visually. Despite some problems, the second new Assassin's Creed game sold incredibly well. Odyssey sold almost 1.5 million copies in its first week, and to date has over 10 million sold. So this formula seems to basically just be printing money. Why not keep it going? In 2020, Ubisoft launched Assassin's Creed Valhalla with the release of the new generation of consoles. Unfortunately, this game was the pinnacle of all of the negative aspects of the new Assassin's Creed games without really any of the pros. Despite having a really cool marketing campaign and next-gen visuals, the game fell flat to a lot of players. The open world was bloated, missions kind of felt like chores, looting was unrewarding, and the movement and combat were just not up to par with the franchise's legacy. To some people, it was just too much of an okay thing. Suddenly, all of the things that made the new Assassin's Creed games great were now the lowlights of the game. However, even though this game reviewed poorly with consumers, it became the fastest selling game in the franchise, as well as the highest grossing title in the series, earning over $1 billion in revenue. Okay, so that's a lot of info, but what the heck does any of this have to do with Assassin's Creed Mirage? Well, even though Valhalla and the other two Assassin's Creed games sold well, they weren't all received well. And surprisingly, Ubisoft is listening to that feedback. Assassin's Creed Mirage is essentially the response to the negative reviews from the last 3 games. It's a return to form for the franchise and seemingly ditching a lot of the aspects that gave the series success in the past 5 years. Instead of the game being 60 plus hours, Mirage is only 20 to 23 hours. Instead of a massive open world, Mirage is just one city. Instead of clunky, loud combat, Mirage emphasizes stealth and actual assassinations. On paper, Assassin's Creed Mirage is the antithesis to the new Assassin's Creed trilogy, and I love it. I love this idea for the game, but also the implications that it has on the industry. Let me explain. I want this game. People want this game. Even after all of the success of the newer trilogy, people have been yearning for a return to form for the Assassin's Creed franchise, the elements that really made people fall in love with the series in the first place. These elements, however, are very different from the recent success that Ubisoft has had, so there's some risk here. Risk for Ubisoft, risk for the franchise, and most significantly, risk for the investors. And you better believe that these investors will be watching this game's performance with eagle eyes. The Assassin's Creed games have basically become Ubisoft's golden goose, so any misstep here is not going to look good to shareholders. To them, failure here means that we could be stuck with massive open-world RPG Assassin's Creed games from here on out. They're looking at the numbers, and truthfully, that makes me a bit nervous. I want this game to succeed. If it's bad, I don't want the shareholders to blame it on the smaller scope or the more traditional gameplay. I mean, after all, this is for a different audience than the newer games, so reception might look a bit different, but that doesn't mean the game is a failure. And if the game is good, whew, oh baby. Now, this is where I think Mirage can change the industry. Let's say that Assassin's Creed Mirage is a home run. It's received super well by reviewers and consumers alike, and it sells a ton. Now, all of a sudden, Ubisoft is at a crossroad. Do they revert back to the large open world trends or continue with this old school style? I say, why not both? Okay, hear me out. I'm talking about dual releases. Both of these types of Assassin's Creed games sell really well and have their dedicated fans, so why not alternate in making the games? Maybe one year they release a large open world title, and then the next entry is a smaller scope, story-focused game. That way, both fan bases are happy, and for the big Assassin's Creed fans, well, you can take their money twice. Now, I know you can make the argument, well, why don't they just put this much detail or story or stealth into the big open world games? Why not combine the best of both types? And that is a good point. My counterpoint, though, is that this is Ubisoft. I don't really have that much faith in them to pull something like that off. Plus, if we're being realistic about this, by selling 2 different types of games, they can increase their sales every year and probably look a lot better to investors who are probably just looking at a graph or something anyway. I mean, yeah, it would be awesome if they could combine the best of the 2 types of Assassin's Creed games, but I don't know, I'm already sort of overwhelmed by all of the other great open world games that are out at the moment. My backlog is starting to grow out of control. By making the 2 different types in alternating years, people who prefer shorter games can get their Assassin's Creed fix, while people who want a longer, more exploration-focused game can get theirs as well. I'm not saying that one type of game is better than the other, just that each type has its different fans. I personally prefer the shorter games. There are only so many games I can commit to. Even if the big open world games are good, there's just so many other, maybe shorter ones that I can play. When I play those games, I get the sense of fulfillment by beating them because they're more contained and manageable, so I'm more likely to choose them and actually finish them. Some people will gravitate towards the open world games, others will side more with the smaller linear games. By making both, then everyone kind of wins. I'm not making an argument for quantity over quality here, it's just that some game franchises have changed so much over time. As the gaming industry evolves, people's wants and expectations shift, so if a franchise is to survive, it's going to have to adapt. Which, to the credit of Ubisoft, is exactly what Assassin's Creed did. But not all of these changes were necessary, and even if they weren't really true to the Assassin's Creed style of gameplay. The new AC games, as good as they are, feel as though they're lacking a lot of the original Assassin's Creed DNA. By having two different playstyles of Assassin's Creed release in alternating years, Ubisoft can pump out more games and fans can pick and choose what they want. It shouldn't have to be either or. And that's where I think that Assassin's Creed Mirage can change the industry. If it sells well and Ubisoft decides to make both types of games moving forward, the old school Assassin's Creed and the new style RPGs, then I'm sure other developers are going to take notice. I mean, what are some other games that have changed so much over time or have just completely fallen off because devs don't believe that fans want that old school type of game anymore? Instead of chasing whatever trends are going on, they could stick with what made fans love the originals and still release more experimental titles. Now, obviously this isn't going to work with every studio. Some teams just don't have the manpower or the resources to do this. But for the publishers that do have this luxury, yeah, why the hell not? Imagine Nintendo hops on this trend. Now we can get Metroid Prime games, hopefully, and then also the classic 2D platforming types like Metroid Dread or Zelda. Why not bring back a smaller 2D style game while the main team works on whatever the next 3D title is? I would buy both. Basically, any gaming franchise that has survived for a long time has had to make changes, so this release style could benefit a lot of them. What do you guys think of all of this? Does any of this make sense to you? Do you think that something like this is even possible? Are you interested in Assassin's Creed Mirage, or have you given up on Ubisoft completely? Let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed the video, please feel free to leave a like and subscribe. It means a lot to me. I appreciate you guys as always, and I will catch you on the next one.